Welcome back to Fast Market on the TD Ameritrade Network. I'm Tom White, and I'm joined by my co-host Kevin Hinks. But let's bring in our next guest, and that's going to be Mr. Andy Swan, the co-founder of LikeFolio.com. Thanks for joining us, Andy.
Oh, it's great to be here. Good topic.
Yeah, it is a good topic. It's pertinent today, especially with the apologies coming out of Southwest. Demand's still there as far as airlines go. We're still lagging on business travel. It is picking up a little bit, and we're lagging on international travel, but demand is still there. What kind of data are you guys seeing for airlines out of LikeFolio?
Yeah, well, first of all, we are seeing a little bit of a comeback for, what I would call leisure travel. The general consumer is starting to get away from the road trip that was so popular in 2020 and getting back on a plane now in 2021, just a little bit. We're about 5% up year over year. That's relatively flat, but what we are seeing is a nice increase year over year for flying professionally, for business, up 49% year over year, and that's accelerating really nicely. So, that came off of really, really depressed levels in 2020, so it's still very low. But the businessman is back in the skies at least a little bit, whereas normal consumers not so much, or at least it's flat. And so what bothers us here when we look at this is actually the way that things have shifted as these people start coming back. In terms of consumer happiness, specifically with Southwest Airlines, we're seeing a massive, massive drop-off in consumer happiness around Southwest Airlines. Flight delays, cancellations, all of these policies that have kind of put people into a polarized environment, even on the airplane, someplace that they're trying to get away from things, is really creating a nightmare for a lot of these companies as they try to decide, what they're going to force their employees to do, what they're going to have to force their customers to do. It's creating a toxic environment around the entire sector. And so far, Delta is the one that's coming out strongest in terms of how they've handled all of these issues. And we see it in consumer happiness data. So it's really kind of shocking to see Southwest, which used to be a consumer happiness leader consistently with LikeFolio data for years and years, really struggle to handle this type of situation in terms of flight delays, poor customer communication, just all the things they used to be really good at. It looks like they're starting to fail at, or at least temporarily, and very concerning from a consumer happiness perspective.
Andy, the mistake we make as a group, right, as a large sample size, is we say things like business travel will never come back, right? You hear people say that all the time, but as you know, after 9/11, people said no one will ever travel again, and now we say business travel will never come back. And if you look at the world through reality goggles, you know that that's probably not going to happen. Business travel will come back, and it may even come back more. It's just a matter of how long it takes to come back. And when you look at a company like Delta, they seem to have grabbed the mantle of customer service and most popular airline back from Southwest. And, it's two ways, right? I think Delta did good things, and Southwest has absolutely shot themselves in the foot. I mean, the headlines, the poor headlines they're getting is just amazing and consistent. So the question is, though, they still need business and they still need international, is what Delta means. So what is you just made kind of a news breaking headline here that business travel is starting to jump back, but at what level is it to where it was before, and how fast are you seeing the growth and the return to business travel? Because that's crucial for some of these legacy firms that were historically so unpopular, but Delta was the one bright light in that group, correct?
Yeah, and Delta remains kind of the one bright light in the group. I think, when you're looking at comparing something year over year like we are, so, travel for work increasing 49% year over year is a very impressive number until you look at where the year was last year that you're comparing to, and it was actually so pathetic that it's pretty impossible to compare to. So it's still significantly down from where we were before, but at least it's a sign of light at the end of the tunnel. And I think the most kind of depressing thing about these numbers is that the people that are really have the choice of whether or not to fly really aren't doing so at considerably higher levels than they were last year. I mean, people, it seemed like we're ready to kind of hit the skies, get somewhere that they couldn't drive to, see a new place. But the advent of these restrictions, the advent of different policies that have made flying cumbersome, the delays, people are really starting to dread this. It shows up in the consumer happiness levels, and so for us, it's I think it's wait another year at this point for the comeback of the airline industry, at least six to 8 months, because people just really aren't wanting to deal with all of those hassles right now. And after what you saw this last weekend, it's kind of like, how can you blame them?
Yeah, and Andy, if you take a look at that, it surprises me. The airline that I have with my miles with is always at the bottom, right? But then you see Southwest, who is always at the top, starting to trend down there. Now, from your data that you guys have compiled over the years, is that going to equate to a harder time for Southwest stock to recover? Because this sticks in consumers' minds, and it says, hey, if there's a $5 difference between Southwest and American, I'm going to pick American because maybe I can get on another flight quicker. Maybe my customer service experience is going to be better. How does this data equate to the actual stock price, or is this just a temporary blip for a company that's always had pretty good customer feedback?
Yeah, they've always had good customer feedback, and you kind of have to expect that to return. But in terms of the business outlook, there's almost no worse time for an airline to be hitting the headlines with terrible, terrible reviews, flight delays, upset customers, all over social media. There's no worse time than the middle of October as people are trying to make their Thanksgiving, their Christmas, their holiday travel plans. It's one of those times where you say, okay, well, maybe it isn't going to be Southwest this year, because can I really count on them to get me from point A to point B? Are they going to have the employees show up for work? Are they going to have the planes in the sky? What is next with this company, I think, is what's running through people's minds right now as they decide which airline to go with for these important travel plans. And that kind of thing can really set the tone for well more than just a few weeks. It's not just, this was headlines at the beginning of a weekend or that lasted 3 or 4 days. But if it starts to impact your family's travel plans during important times in your life, then that can have long-term impacts for customer retention and the kinds of things that normally Southwest was really good at.
Yeah, Andy, I think if, the demand continues, especially Kevin mentioned the TSA data, that Friday to Sunday TSA data that ramps up because people want to get away for holidays or a break. We'll see how long it actually takes for consumers to kind of forget about this, because typically it's not immediate, right? We all know that, so we'll have to wait and see. But great data as usual, Andy. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
All right, that's Andy Swan, the co-founder of LikeFolio.com, joining us to discuss airlines. And now,